Okay. Good morning, all of you, all the students, teachers of botany, and principals. I welcome you all to this intermediate second year webinar session. We already covered about 70% of the syllabus. Very soon, from February 1st, the physical classes are going to commence. Before that, we would like to complete as much syllabus as possible. As part of this, today we are having Srimati J.S. Seema Madam, PGT Botany, TSMS Ramayampet. She will be dealing with the molecular biology. Molecular biology is the new addition, new branch of biology that discusses the biology at a molecular level, at the DNA level, RNA level, and microscopic level, even electron microscopic level. So as part of that, I request Seema Madam to deliver her lecture on molecular basis of inheritance. Earlier, Bharati Madam discussed about the inheritance at genetical level. From today onwards, Mrs. Seema Madam will deliver lectures on molecular levels of inheritance. I invite J.S. Seema Madam. At this juncture, I would like to thank Srimati Shailja Madam, who has been taking a lot of initiation in conducting these webinar sessions. My heartfelt thanks to Srimati Shailja Madam, and I'm all thankful to all the resource persons of the botany also. Welcome, Srimati Seema Madam.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for giving me such an opportunity to explain our major topic, that is molecular biology, and the chapter is chapter 10, molecular basis of inheritance, part 1. So let us go to the topic. So children, what is the image which we are seeing over here? Yes, the image is the DNA, the structure of DNA. Now, what do you understand? What do you know about DNA? Where is the DNA present? So the DNA is present in plants, in animals, bacteria, virus. And children, you know, long back, we used to think that virus was a non-living organism. But in future studies and in later on studies, they concluded that virus is a living organism. That means DNA is present in plants, animals, bacteria, and virus. Most importantly, we humans have DNA. Now, what is the full form of DNA? Yes, the full form of DNA is deoxyribonucleic acids. Now, every living thing has DNA, and its composition is differentiates you from the others. That means almost 99% of the DNA is same for everyone, but only that 1% of DNA is the deciding factor. It makes you unique. Now, what is the DNA? What contains in the DNA? So in DNA, some heredity information is present, and that heredity information is passed from generation to generation. For example, if the color of the eye of your father and the silky hair texture of your mother is passed on to you, how did it come? Yes, it has passed on to you through DNA. So not only these characters, but even few diseases are transmitted from generation to generation. Now, when you see this image, what is that you're able to observe over here? So yes, we are able to see the sugar phosphate. So children, the sugar phosphate is nothing but it forms the backbone of the DNA. The thick layer which you are able to see is nothing but the backbone of the DNA, and it is made up of sugar phosphate. Next, the between you can see this G, C, A and T. These are forming the base pairs. So these are nothing but the nitrogen bases. We are going to discuss about this in detail. Now, let us know the scientists who have worked rigorously for the development of this molecular biology. Who are they? James Davy Watson. James Davy Watson was born in Chicago on 6th April 1928. And you know, children, his interest was bird watching. Yes, his interest was bird watching, and his curiosity to observe the birds led to the work towards genetics, and he completed his BSc degree in zoology in the year 1947. And you know, he also got a fellowship in Indiana University, Bloomington. He received his PhD in 1950, and his work was Effect on X-rays on Bacteriophage Multiplication. Let us know a little bit more information about Watson. That is, he met Crick. that is the next scientist whom we are going to discuss in the next topic, that is Crick. He discovered their common interest, that is Mr. Watson and Mr. Crick were having the common interest on solving DNA structures. So their first attempt to discover DNA was unsatisfactory, but their second effect, that is the second attempt, was very much fruitful. That is, they resulted in the proposal of the complementary double helical configuration in 1953. So this is what about Watson. Let us know about the other scientist, Francis Harry Compton Crick. He was born on 8th June 1916 in Northampton, England. He completed PhD in 1954 on the thesis entitled X-ray diffraction, polypeptides and proteins. So children, though his topic is polypeptide and proteins, his graduation was from the physics. So he completed his graduation from the University College of London and he obtained his BSc in 1937. And children, a critical influence in Crick's life was friendship with Watson, as we have discussed that Mr. Watson, James Davy Watson. So Watson and Crick's friendship was very useful as they were they discovered the double helical structure of DNA and the replication scheme. And you know what are the awards, laurels they both together got? They got mainly, that is the John Collins Warren Prize of Massachusetts General Hospital in 1959 and the Lasker Award in 1960, and above all, they got the Nobel Prize in the year 1962 for discovering the DNA structure. So the major point which we have to remember regarding Watson and Crick is they received the Nobel Prize in the year 1962 for discovering the DNA structure. Now, let us go deep into the topic now. What is that? Molecular basis of inheritance. As you can see in the image, the word genetics, genes, heredity, and genetic variation. Though these terms are a bit new, but we will discuss about each and every word in detail. So genetics is the branch of biology concerned with the study of genes, heredity, genetic variation. Now, what is gene? Gene is the basic unit of heredity. So gene is the basic unit of heredity. And what is heredity? Heredity is nothing but passing of traits or passing of characters from parents to the offspring. Nothing but parents to the children. Offspring in common words is children. So heredity is nothing but passing of the traits or characters from parents to the children, offspring. Now, what are genetic variation? It is the term used to describe the variation in DNA sequence. So we'll discuss the DNA sequence in the further class. Now there will be little bit variations on the DNA sequence. That is nothing but genetic variation. And you know, genetic variation makes us unique, whether in terms of hair color, skin, shape or face, anything. So genetic variations occur. So hope you understood the terms genes, heredity and genetic variation. Now you should understand another point is genes exist on chromosomes and chromosomes are comprised of DNA and proteins. So children, you know where these chromosomes are present? Chromosomes are present in the nucleus and we know where the nucleus is present. So we'll discuss about all. DNA is a molecule that carries genetic information in all the living organisms. As I told you, plants, animals, virus, even human beings, we all have DNA. What is the purpose of DNA? It helps in reproduction, functioning, growth, and development. You know, DNA is a long polymer of deoxyribonucleic acids. Now, location. Location of DNA. Where is the exact location of DNA? So DNA, we discussed from such a long time that DNA is carrying heredity material. That is, the characters are passed on from generation to generation. Where is this exactly DNA present? So the first image is of the image of the cell. So in this cell, we have the cell organelles. We have the outer cell membrane. We have the cytoplasm. Inside the cytoplasm, we have all the cell organelles. As you can see in the image, you can see the chloroplast, you can see the mitochondria, and this is the nucleus. Now the second image is the image of the nucleus. Now in the nucleus, we have chromosomes and this is the image of chromosome. On the chromosome, we are having DNA, that is deoxyribonucleic acids. So with this, it's clear that inside the cell, we have nucleus. In the nucleus, we have chromosomes and in the chromosomes, we have the DNA that we are discussing right now, that is deoxyribonucleic acids. Next, let us know the structure of DNA, deoxyribose nucleic acid. So children, first, as we discussed earlier, the sugar phosphate is making the backbone of the DNA. So who is making the backbone? Yes, sugar and phosphate. As I told you, these are base pairings. So these base pairs are nothing but nitrogenous bases. And in DNA, we have guanine, cytosine, thymine, and adenine. So these are the 4 nitrogenous bases which are present in DNA. Whereas in RNA, there is one more extra nitrogenous base we'll discuss now. So first of all, keep it in mind, the main backbone of the DNA is made up of sugar and phosphates. Internally, the base pairs are made up of guanine, cytosine, thymine, and adenine. Chargaff's rule. So before entering into the depth of this topic, we need to know a small rule which was given by Chargaff. So we call it as Chargaff's rule. Always remember children, adenine must pair with thymine. Adenine cannot pair with guanine or cytosine. It must pair with thymine. Guanine must pair with cytosine. So keep this in mind, adenine pairing with thymine, guanine pair with cytosine. And between these pairing, that is thymine pairing with adenine, we have 2 lines over here. So you must have observed what are the 2 lines. Here you have 3 lines. So there must be a small doubt. Why there is the 2 lines between thymine and adenine? Why are there 3 lines between guanine and cytosine? So yes, children, these 2 lines are nothing but these are called as hydrogen bonds. And these hydrogen bonds are very weak. So thymine, adenine have 2 hydrogen bonds, whereas guanine and cytosine have 3 hydrogen bonds. So keep it in mind, the Chargaff's rule, A double bond T, G triple bond C. So adenine pairing with thymine, guanine pairing with cytosine, double bond and triple bond. This is the Chargaff's rule. Now, let us know in detail the backbone of DNA. As we have discussed earlier also, that the backbone of DNA is made up of sugar and phosphate. So this image will give you a clear-cut picture how the phosphate and sugar are making the backbone. So you can see this is the phosphate. This is the sugar, which is pentose sugar. And again, this pentose sugar is attached to the phosphate. And again, this is having a pentose sugar. So similarly, the pentose sugar is attached to the phosphate. That is the pentose sugar, phosphate is attached to the pentose sugar. And you can also observe 5' and 3'. We will discuss this in detail now. So phosphate, sugar are forming the backbone, whereas the bases, nitrogen base pairing is done by the nitrogenous bases. Next. Now nitrogenous bases. So children, totally we are having 5 nitrogen bases. What are those 5 nitrogen bases? That is, first we have divided the nitrogen bases into 2. They are purines and pyrimidines. Purines and pyrimidines are again divided into, purines are having 2 rings, that is guanine and adenine, whereas pyrimidines are having cytosine, thymine and uracil. So it might be a bit difficult to you. Let us have a small mnemonics to remember these nitrogen bases. So children, purines, as these are rings, so let us give a mnemonics to them. Pure as gold. That means pure is purines, as is adenine, gold is guanine. That is the first letters of our statement. That is pure as gold. Purines are having adenine and guanine. Now pyrimidines. These pyrimidines are cytosine, thymine, and uracil. Children, as you can observe, we have read about guanine, adenine, cytosine, thymine because these are present in DNA. I told you, in RNA, there is a different substance present. So yes, in RNA, uracil is present in the place of thymine. So whenever there comes guanine, adenine, cytosine, and uracil, then we are talking about RNA. So children, now let us have a mnemonics of pyrimidines. So when you remember pyrimidines, you can come, the word should come to your mind is cut. C-U-T, cut. Cytosine, uracil, and thymine. When you talk about purines, it is pure as gold, that is adenine and guanine. Pyrimidines, it is cut, that is cytosine, uracil, and thymine. Another major difference which you have to remember is guanine, adenine, cytosine are present commonly in DNA and RNA. If thymine is present, then that is DNA. In place of thymine, if uracil is present, it is RNA. This is the structure of the phosphate, where the phosphate gets attached to the pentose sugar. Next. Sugars. As you can see over here, we have the ribose sugar and the deoxyribose sugar. So children, mainly if you observe, the whole structure is same for ribose as well as deoxyribose. Only there is a difference, that is at the 2 carbon there is OH in ribose, whereas in deoxyribose there is no OH. And one other major thing which you have to remember over here is oxygen will increase the reactivity of the nucleic acid. Oxygen will increase the reactivity of nucleic acid. That means more the oxygen, more oxygen, more reactivity. If the substance is more reactive, it is less stable. So connect to the point, children. That is more oxygen, more reactivity, less stability. Now, when you come to deoxyribose, the name itself is indicating that at the 2 carbon, the oxygen is absent, deoxyribose. So you can make out the name deoxyribose. At the 2nd carbon, oxygen is absent. So we are calling it as deoxyribose. Now, in this deoxyribose, less oxygen, less reactivity, more stability. So connect to the points over here that ribose is having more oxygen, so the reactivity level is more. As the reactivity is more, the stability is less. When you come to deoxyribose, oxygen level is less, reactivity level is less, so the stability is more. You can come to a conclusion that compared to RNA and DNA, DNA is a more stable component, whereas ribose is not stable. Now, nucleic acids. Because children, as we are talking, the nucleic acids, nucleotides, and nucleosides all are starting with N, and you may get confused. So let us have a brief, clear-cut idea. What are nucleic acids, what are nucleotides, and what are nucleoside? So first, let us know what are nucleic acids. From the beginning of the topic itself, we are discussing DNA, RNA, DNA, RNA. In the name itself, deoxyribonucleic acid, ribonucleic acid. That means nucleic acids are 2, only 2. What are they? Right now, deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid. Now, this deoxyribonucleic acid or ribonucleic acid, both are made of nucleotides. Both are made of nucleotides. As children, I was telling you, the backbone of the DNA is made up of sugar and phosphate. And in between the DNA, we have bases. Yes, if you remember that, then you can see over here, nucleotide is made up of 3 components. That is the phosphate group, the sugar, and the base. Now, the phosphate group, sugar, and the base all together are called as nucleotides. So, nucleotides are nothing but nucleic acids. Clear? Now, let us know what are nucleoside. Now, when you observe this, that is phosphate, sugar, and base, in nucleoside, phosphate is absent. Only sugar and base are forming the nucleoside. Nothing but in simple words, keeping the phosphate aside, keeping or siding the phosphate. Only sugar and base are forming the nucleoside. So children, be clear, nucleic acids are 2, that is DNA and RNA. Nucleotides means 3, that is phosphate group, sugar, and base, whereas nucleoside means only 2, that is sugar and base. In nucleoside, phosphate is absent. Here, we'll talk a little bit in depth, that is nucleic acids. They are nothing but the nucleotides. Nucleotides again, nucleosides, so and phosphoric acid. In nucleosides, what are we having? We are having sugars and we are having nitrogenous bases. And we also discussed in nitrogenous bases, that is purines and pyrimidines. Purines, pure as gold, that is purines, adenine and guanine. Pyrimidines, cut, that is cytosine, uracil, and thymine. So these nitrogen bases are done. When you come to sugars, you are having ribose and deoxyribose. Next. So children, let us know what is the structure of a nucleotide, because we discussed till now, nucleotide is consisting of phosphate, sugar, and a base, whereas nucleoside is not having phosphate, only the sugar and base is present. So now let us know how is the structure of a nucleotide. So the structure of nucleotide is consisting of these three elements. What are they? A pentose sugar. As you can see, 5 carbons will be present. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 carbons will be present. So, and in this, that is why we are calling it as 5C sugar, ribose or deoxyribose. So whether it is RNA or DNA, the sugar will always be 5 carbon. Next, the sugar is linked to the phosphate with the phosphodiester bond. So children, please keep it in mind. You have to remember about 2 bonds over here. A sugar is linked to the nitrogenous base with the glycosidic bond, whereas the sugar is linked to the phosphate with the phosphodiester bond. So keep it in mind, sugar is a pentose sugar, nothing but 5 carbon sugar. Sugar connected to the phosphate or the carbon connected to the phosphate through a phosphodiester bond. Carbon connected to the nitrogenous base through a glycosidic bond. Now, nucleic acids are polymers of nucleotides. So what are nucleic acids? So children, you must be clear till now that nucleic acids are nothing but DNA and RNA. So nucleic acids are polymers. One nucleotide means it's only a nucleotide. Polymers means many nucleotides join together to form nucleic acids. That means a number of nucleotides join together to form the DNA or the RNA. Now, this is the image which is present in our textbook, children. Let us know in detail what is this polynucleotide chain. Only the major points which you have to remember over here is what is this 5' phosphate, what is this 3' hydroxyl group, and just now we discussed the phosphodiester bond and the glycosidic bond. We will discuss this. So this is the nitrogenous base because adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine. So by now you must have understood that these are the nitrogenous bases. And this structure is the 5 carbon sugar and this is our phosphate group. So children, now you can make out which is the glycosidic bond and which is the phosphate bond. So yes, the nitrogenous base connected to the pentose sugar, this is the glycosidic bond. And this is the carbon attached to the phosphate. This is the phosphodiester bond. So with this, it's clear which is the glycosidic bond and which is the phosphodiester bond. Nitrogenous base with the sugar is the glycosidic bond, whereas the phosphate with the carbon is the phosphodiester bond. Now, how is that we are calling 5' phosphate means? So if you number the pentose sugar from here, carbon, that is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5th carbon. So at the 5th carbon, the phosphate is present. So we are calling it as 5' phosphate. So you can see once again 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So the phosphate is attached to the 5th carbon. So it is nothing but 5' phosphate. Next, 1, 2, 3. So when you see this last image that is towards the extreme right side of the image, you are having 1, 2, 3. That means the hydroxyl group is attached to the 3rd carbon. So we are calling it as 3' hydroxyl group. So again, you can understand once again, let us repeat this. The phosphate is attached to the 5th carbon. So we are calling it as 5' phosphate, whereas the hydroxyl group is attached to the 3rd carbon. So we are calling it as 3' hydroxyl group. So with this, you are clear. Why is that we are writing 5' over there? Why is that we are writing 3' over here? So this is clear. I hope you understood the carbon and the phosphate bond is attached with the help of phosphodiester bond, whereas the nitrogenous base and the pentose sugar is attached with the glycosidic bond. Now, let us go to the next, that is schematic representation of double-stranded polynucleotide chain. So children, when you have to remember one thing is that we have discussed the image of the polynucleotide chain. What is that you are going to understand in this image is that you can see this is the pentose sugar, this is the phosphate, and these are the nitrogenous bases. As you know, sugar and phosphate are joined by the phosphodiester bond, whereas the sugar and the nitrogenous base are joined by the glycosidic bond. Now, you have to understand mainly 5 points over here. That is, first one, it is a polynucleotide. This one single structure is the nucleotide. So a number of nucleotides are joined together to form the polynucleotide chain. Next, these are anti-parallel. So children, as I told you, that is 3' to 5'. And when there's another layer, another strand which you can see over here is 5' to 3'. If the another layer which you are seeing over here is also 3' to 5', then we call it as parallel strands. But here the strands are anti-parallel. If the upper layer or the upper strand is 3' to 5', then the opposite strand will be 5' to 3', showing that the double-stranded DNA are always anti-parallel to each other. So with this, the polynucleotide chain means a single nucleotide, a number of polymers make the polynucleotide chain. First one is clear. Second one is anti-parallel arrangement. That is, if the upper strand is 3' to 5', then the opposite strand will be in 5' to 3' arrangement, which we are calling it as anti-parallel arrangement. Next one, complementarity. That is, we have discussed in our purines complementing the pyrimidines. I hope you remember that. So that is thymine, it is pairing with adenine. Cytosine pairing with guanine, adenine pairing with thymine. So this all we can understand over here. So children, another major point which you have to remember is, if you know the sequence of one strand, then you can automatically make the sequence of another strand, because we have studied our Chargaff's rule. So in Chargaff's rule, we have discussed about the pairing procedure. Thymine will always pair with adenine, whereas cytosine will always pair with guanine. And we also discussed about the hydrogen bonds. A and T will have double bonds, whereas C and G will have triple bonds. And we also discussed these hydrogen bonds are weak bonds. So children, I hope you remember all these things which we have discussed. Let me tell you once again, that is polynucleotide chain. One nucleotide will join with another many polynucleotides forming the polymer. That is, we calling it as polynucleotide. Second point is anti-parallel arrangement. If the upper strand is 3' to 5', the opposite strand will be 5' to 3', showing that the double-stranded DNA is anti-parallel. Next one is complementarity. That is the nitrogenous bases pairing with each other. And always remember, the hydrogen bonds are weak bonds. Now let us know what is the central dogma. So children, you can see this image, that is DNA. The DNA will undergo self-replication to form another DNA. Why is that? Nothing but replication, DNA replication. Now the flow of information from genes to proteins. You can see genes are present on DNA. So these information is passed from genes to the proteins. Then it is nothing but central dogma. And how is it occurring? Is it happening just like that? No. Very complicated biochemical steps will lead to the formation of genes to the proteins. So let us know how. What is happening over here? The DNA has the power to copy or make a copy of its own. Nothing but forming another DNA. So that is nothing but DNA replication. Next, from DNA, RNA is formed through the process called as transcription. So children, DNA undergoes the process of transcription to form RNA, and over here also exclusively mRNA, messenger RNA is formed. Next, mRNA undergoes translation to form proteins. So I hope you understood one sequence. DNA undergoes self-replication or replication to form another copy of DNA. And this DNA undergoes transcription to form mRNA. This mRNA undergoes translation to form proteins. So with this, the central dogma is understood. Let me discuss a little bit in detail. Now children, what are proteins made up of? Proteins are made up of amino acids. Proteins are made up of amino acids. RNA are made up of codons. RNA are made up of codons. DNA is made up of nucleotides. As I told you, DNA is the polymer of nucleotide. So now proteins are made up of amino acids. RNA is made up of codons. DNA is made up of nucleotides. So what kind of proteins will depend, what kind of proteins are formed will depend on the type of codons formed. That is nothing but the amino acids present in the proteins will depend on the type of codons present in the RNA. The type of codons present in the RNA will depend upon the type of nucleotides present in the DNA. So that means one component is linked to the other component. Any sudden changes is nothing but changes in the nucleotide sequence. Change in the nucleotide sequence will cause change in the codons. Change in the codons will lead to the change in proteins, and this will again further lead to mutations. So it is not so easy. It is a very complicated process, but it is very accurate and very fast process. Now, one small question to you is, children, will DNA form the proteins first or RNA will form the proteins early? Means which reaction is fast? So when you see the image, RNA will form the proteins fast because they do not have any further steps. RNA can undergo the translation process and form proteins, but whereas DNA, it has to undergo major steps. First is DNA should undergo replication to form DNA, then it has to undergo transcription to form RNA, then it has to undergo translation to form proteins. So it is a lengthy process. So now you understood why RNA can form proteins faster than DNA. Now, packaging of DNA helix. So children, in the earlier class slides, we have understood that DNA is present in the chromosomes. Chromosomes are present in the nucleus. Nucleus is present inside the cell. But we are also telling that DNA is a long polymer of polynucleotides. That means it is very big. Now, how can we accommodate that long polymer of DNA into that small nucleus, which is again present inside the cell? So yes, to accommodate that long DNA inside the nucleus, packaging of DNA helix is very, very important. Now let us discuss what is this packaging of DNA helix. The length of DNA is around 3 meters. In our textbook, they have given 2.2 meters, roughly from 2.2 to 3 meters, that need to be accommodated within the nucleus, which is only a few meters in diameter. As we know, nucleus is very small and the diameter is very less, whereas the length of the DNA is very, very big. Now, in order to fit the DNA molecule into the nucleus, it needs to be packed in an extremely compressed and compact. What do you mean by compressed and compact? Nothing but you're folding it to very small size and fixing it into our nucleus. And so let us read the statement. In order to fit the DNA molecule into the nucleus, it needs to be packed into an extremely compressed and compact structure called chromatid. Now, children, this is very interesting topic. Let us understand this this is one of the topic important to your exams also. Let us go to this image, that is this nucleosome is present in our textbook. They have given you this image and they have not given anything, but we will study what is present here. As you can see, this is the circular histone octamer. This is the DNA strand. Now you should know what is present inside the histone octamer. So let us know what is present inside the histone octamer. So usually that is in each nucleosome, histones are present. How many histones are present? Only 4 histones are present. What are they? H2A, H2B, H3, H4. Only 4 histones are present, and these histones are rich in lysine and arginine amino acids. So children, keep it in mind, these H are nothing but histones. How many histones are present? 4 histones are present. What are they? H2A, H2B, H3, H4, and they are rich in lysine and arginine. But as we are calling it as octamer, octamer means 8 in number. How this octamer has formed? Simply, this H2A is having another H2A, H2B is having another H2B, H3 is having another H3, H4, another H4. So totally how many histones are present? Yes, totally 8 histones are present. So I hope children you understood why are we calling an octamer? Nothing but histones are 8 in number. Now you can see this red color strand surrounding the histones. So that red color strand is nothing but the DNA. Now children, another important point which you should remember over here is histones are positive, whereas DNA strand is negative. So histones are positive and DNA strand is negative. So these histones are coiled together with the help of this negative DNA strand. So this is nothing but supercoiling. So I hope you understood what is present inside that green color circle which we have seen till now. That is inside this circle. So once again, histones are positively charged and DNA are negatively charged. 4 histones, that is H2A, H2B, H3, H4, all are 2 in number, so they form 8, that is histone octamer, behind their own histones. Now DNA is wrapped, histones are wrapped around with the help of this DNA. Histones are always positive, DNA are always negative. And when you see this image, you can see the histones are wrapped around by the DNA. This entire structure, that is with proteins and the DNA, we are calling it as nucleosome. Now, children, when you are getting this question in your exam, how is that you're going to write? Means, so first point what you can write is nucleosomes are like bead-like structures. Now, children, you might be getting a doubt, what is this bead-like structure? So when you see this picture, that is EM picture beads on the string, you can observe over here that the nucleosomes, the dot-like structures are the nucleosomes, and they are connected to each other with a fine thread-like structure. So that's why we are calling it as beads on string. Now, what is this? So first point you can write as nucleosomes is like bead-like structure. It consists of 8 histones molecules and a DNA segment, which is about 150 base pairs. Each nucleosome is separated from another nucleosome. So children, imagine that this type of circle is present over here or over here at the base also. Now each nucleosome is separated from each other with the help of histone, H1 histone. So each nucleosome is separated from each other by the H1 histone. Nothing but we call it as the linker DNA. So children, keep in mind, H1 histone is nothing but linker DNA. So inside the octamer, 8 histone molecules are present, surrounded by the DNA segment. You can also write 8 histones are positive, DNA segment is negative, and each nucleosome is separated from another nucleosome by H1 histone. Nothing but we are calling it as linker DNA. Nucleosomes help to fold DNA into a compact form so that it can fit into the nucleus. Otherwise, the length of the chromosome is so big and linear and greater that it cannot accommodate into the nucleus whose diameter is very less. So that is the reason packaging of the DNA helix is important. Another simple point, another simple concept which you have to understand is chromosomes means chroma, that is means color, absorbing the colors. So here you can remember one point, chromatin, euchromatin and heterochromatin. In euchromatin, as you can see the image over here, the nucleosomes are arranged far, whereas in heterochromatin, the nucleosomes are very close. That means loosely packed regions of chromatins which stain light. And it's very simple. When the nucleosomes are far, they absorb less color, so they are lightly stained. Whereas the nucleosomes are close to each other, they absorb more color, so they are dark in color. Now, who is transcriptionally active means the euchromatin is transcriptionally active, whereas heterochromatin is transcriptionally inactive. Now, with this, the detailed structure of chromosomes is done. Now, let us know the search for genetic material. Now, children, as you know, the both scientists, that is the Friedrich Miescher and Mendel, both were working on their respective topics, and both the studies were going on simultaneously. That is, Mr. Friedrich Miescher was discovering nuclein, whereas principles of inheritance were discovered by Mendel. Both studies were going simultaneously at the same time, but to discover that DNA is the genetic material, it took a long time. It took a very long time to understand that DNA is the genetic material. So let us know, how did we know that DNA is the genetic material? So the major scientist which we have to remember in our studies is Mr. Frederick Griffith. In 1928, Frederick Griffith, in a series of experiments with the bacteria named Streptococcus pneumoniae, witnessed a miraculous transformation in the bacteria. That's why the experiment conducted by Frederick Griffith is called as transformation principle. So children, if you get a question in your exams, what is transformation principle, or write about Griffith's experiment, or write about Streptococcus pneumoniae experiment, nothing but you have to write about the transformation principle only. And what is the year? It is 1928. Now let us know what is this Griffith's experiment. During the course of experiment, he found that living organisms, nothing but he worked on bacteria, could change its physical form. So let us know what is that he observed in the Griffith's experiment. So children, this is Griffith's experiment, and in this experiment, he had taken up Streptococcus pneumoniae bacteria. This Streptococcus pneumoniae bacteria is nothing but the bacteria which causes pneumonia. So I hope you all know what is the pneumonia disease. Nothing but when you are getting a lot of cold and all, the pneumonia gets infected to your chest region, that is pneumonia. But now we are not talking about humans, we are talking about the Griffith's experiment. And in that, what bacteria he has taken? He has taken Streptococcus pneumoniae, and the organism which he has taken for this experiment was the mouse or mice. Okay. Now, what did he do? He discovered that Streptococcus pneumoniae has two strains, that is S strain and the R strain. What is S strain and what is R strain? So children, S strain is nothing but it has a mucus layer, polysaccharide, mucus layer which is made up of polysaccharides. So you can just tell it has a capsule around it. In simple words, it is having a capsule made up of polysaccharides, whereas the R strain is not having the capsule. So keep it in mind, 2 points. There are two types of strains in Streptococcus pneumoniae. That is the S strain and the other one is the R strain. S strain is having the capsule, whereas R strain capsule is absent. Third point which you have to remember, S strain is virulent. What is virulent now? Virulent is nothing but disease causing, pathogenic. So the S strain will cause disease, whereas R strain is non-virulent. That means it will not cause any disease. It is very safe. Even if it is injected, nothing will happen. So children, you have to remember mainly about S strain. That is, S strain is virulent. S strain is having a capsule, polysaccharide capsule, whereas R strain is rough strain. R strain is rough. S strain is smooth. Why is S strain smooth? Because it is having a capsule. R strain is rough because capsule is absent. S strain is virulent. R strain is non-virulent. Now children, let us know what is the experiment he has conducted. So Mr. Griffith has taken the S strain virulent, living S strain virulent, and injected that S strain into the mouse. The result you can read over here, the mouse dies. That means living S strain cells were found in the heart of the mouse. Because we know S strain is virulent, that means it causes disease. Now, living R strain, this is non-virulent. Non-virulent means it will not cause any disease. So this living R strain was injected into the mouse. The mouse was healthy. No pneumonia cells were found. If it is healthy, then it is well and fine. Now, Griffith got another idea. Now, because this S strain is causing the death of the mouse, let me heat kill this S strain and inject into the mouse. So he did the same thing. He killed the S strain bacteria by heating. So the S strain bacteria also was dead. So we are calling that as heat killed S strain bacteria. Now he heat killed the S strain bacteria. As you can see in this image, the heat killed S strain bacteria. He injected into the mouse. The mouse was alive. So he was very happy, thinking that yes, living S strain will kill the mouse. Living R strain will not kill the mouse alive, whereas heat killed S strain will keep the mouse alive. That means another point clicked into his mind. What is that? Now let me combine this living R strain with heat killed S strain. So usually scientists get these ideas. Let me mix and see what's going to happen. And he thought that even I would have also thought that yes, the mouse will not die. So let us see what did he do. He mixed the S strain and he also mixed the heat killed S strain and also mixed the living R strain virus organism into the mouse. And you can see for his surprise, the mouse died. Now this was again a little bit confusion because something has happened over here. When we heat killed the S strain, the mouse did not die. When the R strain, the mouse did not die. But when we mixed each other, the mouse died. So he concluded that some chemical substance from the cell is capable of genetically transforming another cell. So he concluded, what did he conclude? This Mr. Griffith has concluded that live R must have got transformed into heat killed S. And they must have transformed something in the S, which resulted in the death of the mice. So scientists were not able to convince that DNA is the genetic material. But this Griffith experiment is very important in the history of molecular inheritance because this was the first attempt made to know about the genetic material. That they wanted to confirm that there is some genetic material and they performed this experiment. This was the first experiment. So it is very much important in the history of molecular science. Now, to prove that, yes, there is some, sorry children, because this is very simple form of chart where you can understand the transforming principle, because over here we were telling about Griffith's experiment, so you must have been in the concept of Griffith experiment. But Griffith experiment's other name is transforming principle. So in the questions, that is in the exams, if you get the question write about the transforming principle, then you have to write the same experiment only. That is, the Streptococcus pneumoniae is having rough strain and smooth strain. Rough strain means non-virulent. It will not cause disease. That's why it is pleasant blue color. Whereas smooth strain is virulent. That is causes disease. It is red in color. When you injected the rough strain, the mouse was live. Whereas when you injected the smooth strain, virulent, disease causing, the mouse died. And what did he do? He heated this smooth strain virulent. As a result, the pneumonia was killed, so the mouse was alive. When we mixed both, that is heat killed smooth strain and rough strain, he observed that the mouse was dead. So he was confused. What has happened? Nothing but some transformation has occurred. That is why the S has been converted to R. He confirmed that. But actually, the scientists were not satisfied with the conclusion. So let us know what is the conclusion of transforming principle. Yes, Frederick Griffith concluded that R strain bacteria had somehow been transformed by the heat killed S strain bacteria, and some transforming principle was there. As a result, R strain was synthesized to smooth polysaccharide coat and it became virulent, because we know S strain is having a smooth coat around it, whereas R strain is rough, it is not having a coat. So during this transformation principle, this smooth S strain had transformed the material into the R strain. As a result, the R has developed the capsule and it has become smooth and it became virulent. Now, this must be due to the transfer of genetic material. So the word genetic material came into picture. Now, what is that genetic material? That was a big question. However, the biochemical nature of genetic material was not defined from his experiment. Next, the three major scientists, that is Oswald Avery, Colin McLeod, and Macklin McCarty. These are the three scientists who were working on the Griffiths experiment almost after 16 years. Almost after 16 years of Griffiths experiment, these three scientists, they discovered the biochemical characterization of transformation principle. These three scientists, Oswald Avery, Colin McLeod, and Macklin McCarty. So in your exams, they may ask you, please explain about Avery, McLeod, and McCarty's experiment. So this is the experiment which these three people have worked. What is this experiment? Nothing but they restudied the Griffiths experiment, and the years is 1933 and 1944. Now, let us know what has happened over here. What was done by Griffith? We have to remember first what Mr. Griffith has done. So Mr. Griffith has told that is S strain heat killed plus R strain live. He mixed those both, and when we injected into the mice was dead. Now these three scientists analyzed the tissue of the mice who had died, and they found that the most surprising part was in the tissue of the dead mouse, live S strain was found. See now, live S strain was found. That means we know that we have heat killed the S strain, that S strain is dead. How will the dead S strain become alive? No, that is not possible. So what happened? Some material from the S strain has entered into the R strain. As a result, the R strain got converted into the S strain. Nothing but they have formed the capsule. So what? So actually the heat killed S strain cannot become alive. So the something S strain has been transformed. Now, this is nothing but the transformation principle. Now, S strain must have stimulated the rough, R strain to develop the smooth capsule around it, and it became the smooth capsule. Nothing but the rough strain got converted to smooth strain, and it caused the disease. Now, let us discuss what is this exact, procedure of this Oswald Avery, McLeod, and McCarty's experiment. So in 1933-1944, they have performed the experiment. Now, children, you have to keep one thing in mind. Griffith performed the experiment on the mouse, but Avery, McLeod, and McCarty performed this experiment in vitro. What do you mean by in vitro? They did not use the mice, but they used the test tubes. So it is an in vitro experiment. Now, what did he do? He took the heat-killed S cells. And he extracted the substances from the heat-killed S cells and collected it in a test tube. So first point is he have absorbed, or he has taken the heat-killed S cells and he has absorbed or he has taken the substances which are present in the killed S strain and kept it in the, preserved it in the test tube. Now, in the substances, now what is this yellow color thing? Nothing but internal of the S cell, all the biochemical substances which are present are taken into the test tube. Now, obviously, when we are talking about biochemical substances, what are the substances present? Obviously, lipids, sugars, proteins, RNA, DNA will be present. So, first, what did these three scientists, Avery, MacLeod, and McCarthy do? That in the test tube, they have collected the chemical substance of this S cell. First, they have eliminated lipids and they have eliminated sugars using some enzymes. That means this substance is free from lipids and sugars. Then what are the substances which are present in this liquid? So in this test tube, only three substances are present. What are they? Proteins, RNA, and DNA. And children, you have to understand one more thing was, scientists were not able to decide whether protein was the genetic material, RNA was the genetic material, DNA was the genetic material. So now here we are going to clarify who is going to be the genetic material. So now in this material, lipids and sugars are absent. Only three substances are present, that is proteins, RNAs, and DNAs. Now, he took the substance and divided into three test tubes. In the first test tube, he added proteinase. What did he add? He added proteinase. What will this proteinase do? This proteinase will destroy the protein substance present in the test tube. Because I told you, in this test tube, three substances are present. Protein is present, DNA is present, RNA is present. When you are adding proteinase, proteinase will destroy protein. So only two substances will be present, that is RNA and DNA. Now, into this substance, you have taken it in a conical flask. Now, in this conical flask, what is present? Only DNA and RNA. The yellow color thing is nothing but DNA and RNA. Now, to this yellow color liquid, we are adding R cells, live R cells. So, live R cells are nothing but they are not having the coat around them. They are rough cells. Now, when you add the rough cells into this flask, as the flask is containing the liquid, only RNA and DNA are present. So, this R cells got converted to S cells. That means proteins do not have any role to play in the conversion of R cells to S cells. So one point is clear that protein is not the genetic material, because in this fluid only RNA and DNA are present. But when we entered the live R cells, they got converted to S cells. That means some genetic material is present, but protein is not the genetic material. Now in the second test tube, we added RNAs. What RNAs will do? They will destroy the RNA. So in this test tube, the RNA got destroyed. This fluid, we are entering it into the conical flask or pouring it into the conical flask. Now in this conical flask, the fluid which is present, that yellow color fluid, what substances are present? Only protein and DNA substance are present, because we have destroyed the RNA by adding RNAs. So protein and DNA are present. But we know clearly that protein is not the genetic material, because it has proved. Now RNA has been destroyed. So in this test tube, in this conical flask, protein is present and DNA is present. When we added the R cell got converted to S cell. That means RNA is not the genetic material. Now next is the final thing, that is in this fluid, all the three are present, protein, RNA, DNA. Now we added DNAs to the solution. Now when we added DNAs, DNA is being destroyed. It means in this only protein and RNA are present. So we should know the conclusion by now, because protein is not the genetic material, RNA is not the genetic material. So obviously DNA must be the genetic material. We can see the conclusion. So this fluid which is not having DNA, but it is having protein and RNA is being shifted to this conical flask. And into this flask, we have added R cells. And to the surprise, R cells were just like that R cells only. They did not get converted to the S cells. That means if DNA was present, the R cells must have got shifted to S cells. The DNA is not there. So R cells were like that only, showing that yes, DNA is the genetic material, and that was responsible for converting R cells to S cells. So conclusion, the transformation requires DNA. Therefore, it is the genetic material of the cell. So children, with this experiment, it is clear that DNA is the genetic material. Next. One second. Hershey and Chase experiment. So Hershey and Chase experiment proved finally that yes, DNA is the genetic material. So these two scientists worked in the year 1952 and they proved that DNA, yes, DNA is a genetic material. How did they prove that DNA is a genetic material? So Hershey and Chase took E. coli bacteria and bacteriophage as their experimental tools. They took two, that is E. coli bacteria and bacteriophage as their tools. Now, as we all know E. coli bacteria, let us discuss a little bit of the T2 bacteriophage. First of all, you should know what is a bacteriophage. Bacteriophage is nothing but a virus which infects the bacteria to cause a disease. So clearly, once again, bacteriophage is nothing but virus which infect the bacteria. Now, when you see the image of the bacteriophage, this entire black is nothing but the protein coat. Internally, DNA is present. So you can tell that DNA is surrounded by the protein coat. DNA is surrounded by the protein coat. So now, what is this? Actually, what happens? What is this bacteriophage attaching to the E. coli? A small point over here. Bacteriophage gets attached to the E. coli, that is to the surface of the E. coli. And you know, the E. coli is so good that it feels that when the bacteriophage will infect the E. coli and insert this genetic material into the E. coli thinks that it is its own genetic material and it will take up the genetic material. So the genetic material, it will take up the genetic material. The bacterial cell recognizes that the viral genetic material is its own genetic material and it keeps on dividing. So this is nothing but simple infection process, division process. So over here, I hope you understood. Bacteriophage will infect the E. coli bacteria and it will inject its DNA into the E. coli bacteria. E. coli will think that genetic material is, that is the virus genetic material is its own genetic material and it keeps on dividing. So this simple process or simple concept takes place. But Hershey and Chase experiment, some steps were followed. What are those steps? We will go through them. Let's just 1 second. Yes. So this is the image which is present in our textbook. Okay. So this is the image which is present in our textbook. Let us not be in hurry. Let us understand clearly what is happening over here. So children, as you can see over here, the bacteriophage, that is Hershey and Chase, this experiment steps we are going to follow. He grew, that is some bacteriophages in the medium containing sulfur and in the medium containing phosphorus, radioactive sulfur and radioactive phosphorus. So children, once again, we'll tell you, Hershey and Chase grew some bacteria in the medium containing radioactive sulfur, while some other bacteriophages in the radioactive phosphorus. So the bacteriophages grown in radioactive sulfur contained radioactive protein, whereas the bacteriophages which were grown in radioactive phosphorus contained radioactive DNA. So 2 points you have to remember. Radioactive sulfur contained radioactive protein. Radioactive phosphorus contained radioactive DNA. So what is the point which you should understand is proteins can absorb sulfur, whereas DNA can absorb phosphorus, because in the structure of DNA we have discussed there is a phosphate group and a nitrogenous base and a sugar. So that means a phosphate is present. So phosphate is absorbed by the DNA. That is one simple concept which you can keep it in mind. So once again, the first step is he has grown the bacteriophage in radioactive sulfur and he has grown the bacteriophage in radioactive phosphorus. So what happened? The bacteriophage in phage grown in radioactive sulfur contained radioactive radioactive protein, whereas the bacteriophage grown in radioactive sulfur contained radioactive DNA. Now let us know what is this. The bacteriophage were allowed to infect the E. coli bacteria. Now this bacteriophage grown in the sulfur medium, now the bacteriophage grown in the phosphorus medium were infected to the E. coli bacteria. This is nothing but the infection. The first step is infection. Now let us know what is happening in the next step. So as the infection step has been completed, something changes must have happened. As the infection proceeds, the viral coats were removed from the bacterial cell by the process called as blending. See children, when the bacteriophage will attach to the E. coli, the first work what it will do is it will inject its DNA into the E. coli bacteria. So first work, that is in the infection stage, they got attached to the E. coli, they have entered or they have injected the DNA into the E. coli. You can see the bacteriophages are empty, but they are attached to the E. coli. So due to blending, nothing but slight movement of the E. coli, these bacteriophages will move away from the E. coli bacteria. So what is this happening? Nothing but this is called as blending process. This is called as blending. Now after blending, few virus particles were left on the surface of the bacterial cell. So to remove those virus particles also, centrifugation. Centrifugation is nothing but you have a small plate, and for that plate test tubes will be kept into the plates, and that will be circulated in a very fast manner. As a result, the bacteriophages which are left over also will be eliminated, and the major centrifugation process also will take place. So what is that? After the centrifugation process, the major points which we have to study will come now. What is that? After centrifugation, the bacterial cell contained only the genetic material of the virus. So now this E. coli is having the genetic material of the bacteriophage, nothing but this bacteriophages, the genetic material is present. Now let us know what is happening. Now in centrifugation tube, so children, this image is to show you what has happened at the ending. So this is the after the centrifugation tube. So what happens after the centrifugation tube? That is, after the centrifugation process, the bacterial cells contain only the genetic material of the virus. Now in centrifugation tube, the particles which are heavier in weight will come to the bottom of the test tube, and the particles which are light in weight will come to the top layer, which are onto the upper surface of the test tube. So we are calling the substances which got settled at the bottom as pellet, and the substances which got settled on the top surface, we are calling it as supernatant. So I hope you know what is the pellet and what is the supernatant. In the centrifugation process, in the test tube, whatever heavy particles are present, they will get settled in the pellet. The substances which are light will be settled on the topmost surface. So let us know what has happened to the conclusion. So that is in the first case, that is we are talking about the radioactive phages which are grown in the radioactive sulfur. So what happened over here? Bacteriophages grown in radioactive sulfur was found that in centrifugation, no radioactivity was detected in the bacterial cell, but radioactivity was detected in the supernatant region. That means the supernatant region was consisting of radioactivity. That means the bacteriophages which are made up of the protein coat were light in weight, so they were in the supernatant region. So this is having radioactivity. Now that means the genetic material which has entered the bacteriophage was not radioactive. That is the reason this is not showing any color. It is normal, colorless. So telling that the protein coat was up, the proteins were phosphorus was absorbed by the protein coat, and they are in the supernatant region, whereas the genetic material did not absorb the sulfur. So that is why it is settled at the bottom. So clear that genetic material was has not absorbed the sulfur. Now in the second case, it has detected that the bacterial cells were not radioactive, and it was detected that supernatant region. Since radioactivity was detected, one second, radioactivity was detected in the bacterial cell, that got transferred from the bacteriophage to the genetic material region, that is towards the bacteriophage. So once again, let us get through this last, that is phages grown with radioactive phosphorus. So what is happening over here? In the centrifugation tube, radioactivity was detected in the bacterial cell, whereas no radioactivity was detected in the supernatant region. As you can see over here, this blue color is showing radioactivity. So that means radioactivity was detected in the bacterial cell. It was DNA which got transferred to the E. coli bacterial. Hence, DNA was the genetic material. So in simple words, Hershey and Chase experiment is that when the bacteriophage is grown in sulfur, was absorbed by the protein coat, whereas the bacteriophage is grown in the phosphorus, that phosphorus was absorbed by the DNA. That's why the protein coat was on the supernatant region. That is, the proteins of these bacteriophages were in the supernatant region, whereas the DNA in the bottom, that is at the pellet, was colorless. It did not show radioactivity. But whereas the phages which are grown in the phosphorus region absorbed the DNA, that is, the DNA absorbed the phosphorus. That is why the supernatant was colorless, whereas the genetic material was showing radioactivity. So with this, it is clear that Hershey and Chase has proved that DNA is the genetic material. And let us know the properties of the genetic material, that is replica, stability, mutation, and Mendelian characters. So children, as you can see over here, what is replica? When a particular material is able to make a copy of itself, we are calling it as genetic material. Nothing but making its own Xerox copy is replication. If you know one strand of DNA, we can understand another strand of DNA, that is nitrogen bases, that is Char-Gaff's rule. If you follow that, you can understand that. Next one is stability. In stability, we are having heat-killed bacteria, renature, then 2'-OH and thymine. Let us quickly understand what are these all. Heat-killed, as you know, because we discussed in the Griffith's experiment. Lastly, when Griffith performed the experiment by combining rough strain with heat-killed smooth strain, the mouse was died. That means the smooth strain has transferred the genetic material to our strain, making it virulent. Renature. Children, renature is nothing but coiling and uncoiling. Whenever you are heating the DNA, the coiled double-stranded DNA will unwind itself. Nothing but denaturation. If you heat it more, it will separate with each other. But when you cool it, they again come back to the normal position, that is coiling with each other, renaturation. So DNA will show denaturation and renaturation. Next one is 2'-OH. Children, as we have discussed earlier also, ribose sugar and deoxyribose sugar, presence of OH, oxygen. I told you, oxygen will increase the reactivity. So more the reactivity, less the stability. Similarly, deoxyribose also, it is having less oxygen. So less the stability, less oxygen means less reactivity, more stability. So with this, we can clear that the 2'-OH, that is absence of 2'-OH, is nothing but more stability of the DNA. Next, thymine. Thymine is present in DNA, whereas uracil is present in RNA. In fact, the presence of thymine at the place of uracil confers additional stability to DNA. Nothing but presence of thymine will increase the stability of the DNA. Next, mutations. Children, what are mutations? The sudden change in the nucleotide sequence leads to mutations. So the DNA genetic material must be able to mutate. Now, who is more stable, DNA or RNA? As we have discussed earlier, children, DNA is more stable than RNA. We all know DNA is more stable. Now, and the substance which is more stable will mutate slowly. How is that it will mutate slowly? It is more, if RNA is highly reactive. Highly reactive means it will form many generations. And if it is forming many generations, that means it will undergo a lot of changes. Who is fast? The process of RNA mutation is, RNA growth is fast. So reactivity is fast. Mutations occur also fast. Whereas DNA, stable. Reactivity is less. Process of DNA formation will be slow. So mutation also will be slow. Next. Genetic material must be expressed itself in the form of Mendelian characters. Children, Mendel has given us a lot of traits, 7 pair of contrasting characters and all. So this genetic material must follow the Mendelian characters, and in that part also we have to understand the central dogma. That is why in the initial of the class I have explained you about the central dogma, that is DNA should undergo replication and form a copy of DNA. DNA will undergo transcription to form RNA, whereas RNA will undergo translation to form proteins. So in another detail point is DNA have nucleotides, RNA have codons, proteins have amino acids. The amino acids form will depend on the quality of the codons form. The quality of the codons formed will be depending upon the nucleotides. So in this way, this is the central dogma of our molecular biology. Now let us know what we have learned till now. So children, we have learned the scientists who discovered DNA, the structure of polynucleotide chain, packaging of DNA helix. So whenever the question comes of packaging of DNA helix, you have to mention nucleosome, that is the octamers and histones and all. The search of genetic material by Meisner and Mendel, both the scientists were working together, but it took a long time to discover DNA. So who discovered DNA means, yes, there was the transforming principle which was given out by Griffith. Biochemical characterization of transforming principle by Avery, MacLeod and McCarthy. These 3 scientists proved that yes, DNA is the genetic material. The genetic material is DNA. Hershey and Chase experiment is the final experiment which proved that yes, finally DNA is a genetic material. Properties of genetic material we have discussed till now, that is replica, that is stability, mutation, and they have to express the Mendelian characters. Now, this is some of the questions which you can take it as a homework and complete the work and show to your concerned botany teachers. Let us revise them. Who proved DNA is a genetic material? What is the organisms they work? Explain briefly about the central dogma. What are the properties of genetic material? And transformation of Griffith's experiment, Hershey and Chase. So children, all of these are having the concern marks. You can make a note of these, refer your textbook for the answers, and then you can make the notes and show it to your concerned botany teachers. So this is the topic for today. We'll continue the major remaining topic in our next class. Sir.
Thank you very much, madam. Excellent,
Thank you.
really excellent.
Yes.
I felt only you can teach such a wonderful topic. They given a very good insight into the total content.
Yes.
We are thankful to not only myself, the entire BIPC first year students of model schools and other societies and other sectors will be thankful to you for presenting such a complex subject in such a simple manner. We will continue with the further sessions in the upcoming days. I thank Shailja Madam, Additional Director, Joint Director, and other dignitaries, and my webinar core team members who are working on this webinar for the last 5-6 months. So thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, madam, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.